Hello and welcome to Kody and Korbin Have a Podcast, the show where two former roommates talk about a new movie every week. But this week on the show, we're talking about everyone's favorite legal concept, copyright law. And of course, the mini versions of Pinocchio that we saw in the year 2022. As always, I'm your host, Korbin Zvokel, and joining me is my little wooden boy paralegal, Kody Webb. Kody, how's it going?
It's going great, man. Yeah, another great intro from you off the top. Great start to 2023, I would say. But yeah, I'd say out of the two of us, you would be Geppetto and I would be Pinocchio.
I think you're more of a Jiminy Cricket, if we're being honest, but
I like that actually.
Maybe the podcast is our Pinocchio.
I like that even more.
You're like the bad conscience in this case.
Jiminy's the best part of all those movies, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, I'm excited for some legal jargon, and we're gonna get down to the nitty gritty today. So it's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. We're opening 2023 with a discussion about what the public domain is, what are some public domain characters, some of our favorites within the public domain, as well as just kind of this weird happenstance of Pinocchio movies. There's been an influx of them in the last year and a half. So we're going to kind of do some reviews of those movies, going to talk about, its journey over the years in relation to the original 1940 Disney film. But I'm really excited for this episode. It's one that I've wanted to do all the way since the beginning of 2022, really. And I've been saving for now after, we get all these Pinocchio movies released.
True. And I mean, yeah, I've been hyping up, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, since the dark ages of the show.
The lore of the podcast, Pinocchio, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, or George Miller's Pinocchio, depending if you're Kody.
That's coming out next year, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Best original score, right?
Yeah.
Previously on KHAP.
This is sort of my shot in the dark out of all the shot in the darks of any category. I didn't go Dune because I thought it'd win special effects. So I had limited choices. So I went for something very different. Went for a film called Pinocchio, which is supposedly coming out this year. So being directed by George Miller, and it's a stop motion animation musical. And I wanted to bring the cast to do it just to bring my argument up. It's got a banging cast. Tilda Swinton, Christopher Waltz, Ewan McGregor. It probably won't even be released this year, if I'm being brutally honest. Also, it probably won't even see the light of day for like the next 5 years. But if it does happen to come out, I think it will be nominated in this category. It should have great music. George Miller is obviously a great director. And cats like that, they can sing, they can do it all. They got great voices. So yeah, this is sort of the category I ran out on. And I'm throwing Pinocchio out there.
I love it.
Interesting pick, but we'll go for it. Yeah.
Sick. I looked it up and saw Ewan McGregor's playing Jiminy Cricket. So
I'm sold. Best picture. Come on.
If there's a shot, it's probably this, between this and Pinocchio, who's to say, really?
Really.
So I wouldn't know Time to Die.
I think Pinocchio is going to be the godfather of our generation, is what it sounds like to me.
That's true. They probably shouldn't release it this year because we're not ready as a culture yet.
I'm not.
We've been proving ourselves.
I'm putting her down for best cinematography. I don't know if it's the most obvious choice. Definitely another out there pick from me, but I think she could pull it out. So I'm going Chloe Zhao.
Could that be back-to-back cinematography wins for Chloe Zhao? I think she won last year.
Well, I do hate to. Well, I hate to break. Well, I don't think she won. I think Mank won, but she was nominated.
Oh, did she?
Okay.
She was. She won. The thing about Nomadland is she was the director, cinematographer, and editor for that.
She did it all.
Eternals is a guy named Ben Davis doing the actual cinematography, but if Chloe Zhao is, directing, and she obviously has cinematography experience, she's gonna have a large role in the way this movie looks. I like the pick.
Thanks for calling me out, Corbin. Thank you.
Well, I could call you out and tell you that Pinocchio is being directed by Guillermo del Toro, not George Miller. So.
Oh no!
Oh, I got those mixed up.
Oh, for 2.
Yeah, I have that on my notes. I said the wrong name. Oh,
you had Happy Feet on the brain. Big George Miller guy.
You didn't call me out in real time, so it doesn't count. Guillermo, that's right, man. Come on.
Welcome back to your regularly scheduled programming.
But yeah, I think it's gonna be fun. There's kind of a lot of characters and a lot of things to talk about, in the public domain, what's coming into the public domain. I think it should be a good one. And we could just talk about some shitty Pinocchio movies too. So can't go wrong.
And this is actually really a perfect time for it because we'll discuss further what the public domain is and how it works. But when things enter the public domain because of expiration, it's always at the first of the year. So we're at the first of the year, and there's a whole new trove of things from 1927 that have all officially entered the public domain as of January 1st. So definitely a cool thing to talk about.
Yeah. I feel like I did do obviously a little bit more, research and all this. And it took me back to my college days, weirdly enough. When I took summer classes at Purdue one year, like an entire week, we just focus on like public domain, how long it takes, who's coming into the public domain. And I think it is like super, super interesting. So yeah, I agree. Let's kick it.
Well, Kody, since you took a class and you learned about it, I want to hear, before I give the researched explanation, how would you describe what the public domain is?
So, I mean, in a sense, this is obviously my definition as well. This isn't, out of a textbook or anything. But I mean, once you create characters, it's sort of like you have an expiration date on owning them. I don't know all the exact numbers, but basically
we'll get into it.
What it comes down to is, say, you create a character in 1900. After a certain amount of years after you died, that character can go to the public. Anybody can do anything with that character that they want. And basically, it just opens up a ton of opportunities for like, obviously filmmakers, everybody else as well, writers, to sort of just dip their creative genius in this character that they kind of weren't allowed to before. So it's kind of just a cool idea where, once enough time has passed, sort of it's up for grabs for anybody.
I think a good entry point, that you said it well, Kody, and I'll get into specifics, but you lay it out well. I think a good entry point for this is the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey horror movie, because it's releasing next year. And a movie like this is obviously, Winnie the Pooh is associated with Disney, the classic Christopher Robin story. It's been told many times, but the actual copyright to Winnie the Pooh and like being able to, for any person to own it, ended in 2022 because it was 95 years after
1926,
which is when that Christopher Robin book was published. So because of that fact, now Winnie the Pooh, anybody can write a Winnie the Pooh story. You can write a Winnie the Pooh story. I can make a Winnie the Pooh drawing and sell it in perpetuity because nobody owns the rights to that. Now, there are some further things about, multiple versions of a character released different times. We'll get into that. But going back to the basics, the public domain, and I do want to credit some good Wikipedia research here, also some Stanford Law Library research, and a few other sources along the way, but CNN, but the public domain is just any creative materials that have no intellectual property laws to protect them. Now, these as copyrights, trademarks, patent laws. Each of those things is different. We don't really need to describe why, but basically these are not owned by any singular person. The public owns them. They're in the public domain. Anybody can take these public domain materials and just use them. They don't have to ask permission, and nobody is ever allowed to own that character or that entity or that picture, whatever it may be. It can be writings, it can be pictures, it can be, physical things that are made. It's important to also recognize that while individual works under the may enter the public domain, a collection may not. So, for example, a lot of E.E. Cummings poetry is in the public domain, but a scholar could take the greatest poems of E.E. Cummings, put them into a book that they specifically select. Now they own that collection as a whole. Or I could take a bunch of photographs and throw a public domain song and they're all public domain photographs and put them in a specific slideshow in a specific order. Well, now I own that, but I don't own the individual pieces that I own the copyright to that individual thing I created, but not the specific pieces. Is that making sense so far, Kody?
I mean, kind of, but not really. So you're saying, let's just use Winnie the Pooh as an example, which by the way, I think that trailer should definitely be the clip of the week.
There you go. Good clip of the week.
You're the first person I ever shown this place to.
And why am I so special?
Because soon we'll be Christopher and Mary Robin. We should be close now.
We're not going to find them.
We will. Pooh, Piglet, Eeyore. We were friends for many years, and they're out there.
Christopher, we need to leave. Now.
I really need to find out what's happened there, okay?
Kind of cold. Did you say how's a pool?
We need to go. Laura's dead. There's someone else outside. What was that?
We used to be friends. Why are you doing this, please? I would have never left, I swear, I swear.
But so you're saying, if you take like the original, Christopher Robin book, whatever it was back in 1910, and like you take the first chapter and the third chapter, and then you make a new book where that's the first chapter and the second chapter, you can copyright it as your own. That's what you're saying? That's bogus.
Well, I do want to say that I am not a lawyer, and this was, just some research that I did across various sources on the internet. So if there's anything that I say that isn't quite 100% correct, don't take this as legal advice, basically.
No, I believe you. I'm just saying that's actually pretty crazy.
The specific example they give, though, is with poetry and E. Cummings. So, like, if you take all his poems and make a book out of it, that specific selection and that book, like, you can't just take that book and remake it and sell it as your own.
Right.
Generally speaking. The question, though, is how do things get into the public domain? How does that happen? And you alluded to, after a certain number of years, which would be the first example, the copyright simply expires after a given amount of time. And this is also important to know. This is all due to US copyright law. Things are different in other countries and how that works and who owns it. But at a certain point in the US, specifically 95 years after something is published or 70 years after the death of the creator is when something will enter the public domain. There's also specific instances where they don't renew their copyright correctly, or maybe I create something and I say it once, I want it to be for the public. That's known as dedication. Also, there's like just specific works that copyright law doesn't pertain to. But those are all the different reasons that it can enter the public domain. There's been multiple laws that have happened over the course that have kind of changed these things. As recently as 1998, there was the Sonny Bono copyright law, Term Extension Act, which took it from 75 years after publishing to 95 years. So there was a weird thing where there was like a 20-year period from 1998 to 2008 where nothing new entered the public domain because they had extended it by 20 years. Now, every single year, things are entering the public domain. Before January 1928, if it was released before that time, it is currently in the public domain because that's 95 years to 2023, right? And
Good math.
in 2024, we'll have a whole slew of things that were all made before January 1st, 1929, which brings me to a specific character. Do you know something released in 1928, Kody? Do you know a popular character that next year will enter the public domain?
I believe so. I believe it's Steamboat Willie himself, no?
You're damn right. In 2024, January 1st, 2024, Steamboat Willie will be officially public domain, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah. And that was another thing that we'd covered in that class as well. Obviously, like Mickey Mouse going into the public domain is massive. But I believe Disney is going to fight it. They have an argument.
They do have an argument,
but I don't know if it'll hold up. Go ahead.
So it has been proven that if a character is changed or iterated upon, then those changes do not automatically enter the public domain. It is only the version of it that is available at the time. However, this gets into the weeds. Obviously, Mickey Mouse, his eyes get bigger. They add pupils. He stops abusing animals in the same way that he did. He has bigger ears, a shorter nose. So those things will not enter Mickey Mouse will not be in the public domain. People might try and skirt the edges and find, but because of a 2014 opinion in a case between the Klinger and the Conan Doyle estate, which, if you know, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was the author of Sherlock Holmes. They've been fighting public domain for years because Sherlock Holmes is currently a public domain character. Now, in that 2014 opinion, what they were trying to say was that because even though the original works had entered the public domain at that point, not all of the Sherlock Holmes stories had. So their argument in 2014 was we should still just own the character because we still own the copyright to some versions of it. The government, the Seventh Circuit Court, rejected this and said, no, once a character enters the public domain, that character is available, but if there's any changes that are made, then those are still under copyright law, kind of leading us to the Steamboat Willie thing. Now, there's actually a current case that's happening, or at least recent legal proceedings of the Conan Doyle estate fighting Netflix because of Enola Holmes. And their kind of their point of view is that in the Enola Holmes story, which Enola Holmes was like an original idea, it was never made up by Arthur Conan Doyle or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. However, Sherlock Holmes does appear, and he is seen as, he's like really friendly, and he's kind of like a lighthearted older brother type. And because it's Henry Cavill. So right. he's kind of like a positive Sherlock Holmes. But the thing is, in the Sherlock Holmes stories that are currently in the public domain, he's always an asshole. And it's not until like later, this is their assertion at least, it's not until later under certain works that are still copyrighted that he develops a kinder, warmer heart that you would see in Enola Holmes. Now, the specific stories they're talking about just entered the public domain as of today. So it doesn't really matter because they did recently just now enter the public domain, but they were making that argument as Enola Holmes was coming out.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think, I don't know if I actually back that. And I don't know if I back the Steamboat Willie thing either. Just because, once that character's gone in, like you have freedom to do whatever you want with it, I feel like. So, I mean, maybe we'll get Steamboat Willie showing up and it's just a dick Mickey Mouse. Sort of like a Who Framed Roger Rabbit type movie or something like that. I think that'd be super interesting. And even talking about Sherlock Holmes as well, I mean, the Robert Downey Jr. version, and I mean,
there was the Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, Sherlock and Holmes.
There's such different versions. I feel like it's so hard to argue like this is our exact one. But with Mickey Mouse, it is a little bit more easy to see. But I think people are definitely going to try and still jump around it.
Oh, I think we'll definitely see a ton of Mickey Mouse, Steamboat Willie, some things.
Oh, yeah.
Now that it's available, even if it's like one-off jokes, because like literally anybody can use it. Like I can post a Twitter. Now, of course, I can do that anyways, but legally I can't, right? So now like legally you'll be able to make money off of it. There's going to be shirts with Steamboat Willie getting sold.
We should jump on it. We should like produce a Steamboat Willie series or something. Strike it while nobody else is coming.
We have a year for pre-production.
I'd be down. Oh, we'd make bank too.
We're not great animators. I think that's our big issue. Another like funny popular example is I think Great Gatsby was a year or two ago entered the public domain, which obviously Great American Novel, F. Scott Fitzgerald. They've made movies about it, but they had to gain permission. Now anybody could make a Great Gatsby movie if they wanted, or at least like a parody or a version of it. Think Oh Brother, We're Out There as to the Odyssey. Maybe we can make a weird country version of the Great Gatsby, Kody. Who knows?
I'd be down for that too. Bring back Tobey Maguire.
For sure. I mean, he's been popping off in Babylon, but someone did a Great Gatsby book that they're selling on Amazon. And do you know what the only change they made to it was?
No, I have no idea.
It's The Great Gatsby, but Nick has scoliosis. And all it is it's the original book, but in every chapter, they've added just a one sentence where he makes a reference to him having scoliosis. Nick obviously is the narrator of it. It's the Tobey Maguire character.
Yeah.
But the book is exactly the same. F. Scott Fitzgerald's word for word, original text, except for a one poorly integrated sentence that makes reference to this. It is referred to as the minuscule references arguably add immense depth of beauty to Fitzgerald's original work, or at least the Amazon ad does.
Interesting. I mean, will that hold up in court? I feel like that shouldn't really.
It's no, but that's the thing.
That's
the Great
legal?
Gatsby is public domain. Literally, I can take it and sell my own versions of it. Like
that makes sense then. Yeah. But that is still really dumb, just like reimagining of it. Like that's just a money grab. If we're doing Steamboat Willie, we're gonna make it good at least.
I mean, obviously, of course we will. Yeah.
I think you nailed most of it. We'll get into a bunch more that are upcoming.
We're gonna do our top 5 favorites.
Some of our favorites as well, but yeah, I said we kick it over to the Pinocchios because we got a bunch to cover.
So Pinocchio is connected in the sense that it is in the public domain. The Adventures of Pinocchio, originally published by Carlo Collodi, or written and published by Carlo Collodi in 1883. Obviously, that's well past the point where it is considered the public domain. That's why Disney was able to make their original animated version of it. It is obviously closely associated with Disney, but there has been so many countless versions of Pinocchio made over the years. It may be one of the most like adapted characters in movies. I can't speak specifically, but it has been done countless times. And in the last year, it's been done 3 times, very notably. And I wanted to kind of discuss those 3 as well as the original Disney version in this episode.
Definitely. And as well, I mean, Pinocchio's been in the public domain since the 40s, right?
Yeah, for a really long time. Like, yeah, it's been around. So there's people, every version has been made of it that you can imagine.
And for some reason, they decided to make 3 in 1 year. So weird.
And even I think like in 2019, there was like a live action, darker retelling Italian version. So like Pinocchio, a lot of people love it. A lot of people hail that original Disney movie as a great masterwork. Pinocchio himself is a metaphor for the human experience. I've never been a huge fan of Pinocchio. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Are you a big Pinocchio guy, Kody? Beyond the jokes that we make?
I mean, absolutely not. I think Jiminy Cricket is a fun character and stuff, but I've never been attached to it. I don't know I don't know anybody who's been like a massive Pinocchio fan in my life. Maybe that's just like a Midwest thing. Maybe, you go different parts of the world. Maybe in Italy it's a big deal, but no, I feel like
philosopher Benedetto Croce considered it one of the greatest works of Italian literature.
Well, the Italians must have not produced too much good because it's kind of a boring story. But it is iconic, to be fair. Everybody does know who Pinocchio is. Everybody knows, the no strings on me bit and everything. But I feel like that's just because it's been around for 200 years, like we've said. So it's kind of just getting old, and all these movies coming out like doesn't help with that.
Have you watched the original 1940 Disney cartoon?
I have. It has been a while. I know that it is fairly dark, but I mean, some of the movies we're going to talk about today are fairly dark as well. It's kind of a dark story. But yeah, I think I saw it once when I was like maybe 8, 9 years old. About you?
Yeah, I had seen it growing up, and I did rewatch it, and I was kind of surprised with some of the things I saw in it. We'll talk about it, but I think my relationship to Pinocchio was most influenced by Shrek and the Shrek films, because the role that Pinocchio plays in those, I think has had the greatest impact on me, and I've returned to Shrek a lot more over the years. And I think the cultural impact there for our generation is probably much greater.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, that's just another great use of him, though. I think comedic relief, like dumb Pinocchio, is probably the best version, if I'm being honest. He's got to be up there. So, yeah, had to mention Shrek as well. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah. And obviously, your nose growing when you lie is like everybody knows that. Like you tell kids that, like, that's really what that 1940 version was just like trying to scare kids a little bit. It's a story of morality, of right and wrong. That's clearly had a huge impact. I mean, your nose growing, oldest time.
I mean, yeah, I feel like that's the genesis of the character. Really, is mostly created to be like, hey.
But
kids,
I will argue, I can't speak to the original work, but it's interesting to see that it does play a role in the original version and in the Disney remake that we're going to talk about, but I will argue it plays a smaller role than I expected. Like his nose, he doesn't lie a lot though. That's the thing. He's not always lying, and his nose, like, it's established early, and then maybe it has a payoff in the end. Specifically, Guillermo del Toro's version, there's a big payoff. That's how they escape, right? He's able to lie and grow his nose. But I feel like that is such a small part of the whole. Like there's so much more to the Pinocchio lore that gets overlooked.
Yeah. I mean, in the Disney new live action as well, it's pretty much a similar thing to Guillermo's, which is funny.
They grab a key.
Yeah, it's really not talked about at all until that scene in the movie, which is probably like an hour and a half in, which is kind of weird. But I mean, it does deal with like themes of greed and, sort of children not listening to their parents, that sort of thing. So it does still have those themes, but yeah, the nose, I feel like that's the most recognizable of like telling kids exactly what to do.
So obviously this year was kind of like a weird happenstance. We talked about like all this amalgamation. Why do you think 2022, why did we get 3 this year? Because obviously the public domain didn't just expire. Like what is it? How did we get here, Kody? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I think obviously Disney has been doing their thing where they just want to do a
The
lot
live action remake
of every single property they have, just straight cash grab. Which that's fair. That's their strategy. The Guillermo one, I think he just has a connection to that character. I mean, he's
been trying to make this movie for like a decade. And finally, Netflix did their thing, and they gave him a little bit of cash to make it happen.
Yeah, and I mean, his story was obviously a little bit more developed than Disney. And then the Russian one, I don't know. You're gonna have to tell me on that. I'm lost. Spoiler: I did watch the trailer for.
Okay, good.
So I have many thoughts, but yeah, I don't know. Why do you think Pinocchio's this big hit this year?
You touched on the Disney live action thing. I think that's definitely part of it. It's just kind of now's the time for them to do the Pinocchio one. They've done the Cruella and the Beauty and the Beast and the however many Jungle Book, Lion King.
What have they not done really, other than Pinocchio? Not too much.
Not a lot, right? So you've got that. It was bound to happen. It just so happened. You've got the COVID of it all that kind of pushed all of these things together. I think, the Guillermo del Toro one we talked about, you picked it to win an Oscar last year, and here it is. It released in December of this year. And like,
I get nominated this year.
Release dates. Oh yeah, maybe Best Picture nominated. We'll get into that, but
no.
Who knows, Kody? But yeah, I think the COVID of it all kind of pushed things together. I think the Russian version, I don't know. I think maybe it was kind of capitalizing on. I think the 3 of them all were kind of capitalizing upon each other. Of like, oh, Pinocchio's really in the conversation. Let's make sure we get the movie out and get it released. And I think the Disney one definitely pushed its release date to be at that spot of like, we're going to get there first. We're not letting this clearly superior Guillermo del Toro version get out there before it. It's also a case of this kind of thing in Hollywood of twin movies, which maybe will be a whole episode down the line. But, this happens a lot of times where similar scripts get floated around, things happen. We did The Prestige on this.
That happens so much. Yeah. The Illusionist, The Prestige. What's those space movies? Deep Impact.
Armageddon.
I feel like every other year.
Dunkirk in the Darkest Hour, White House Down, Olympus Has Fallen.
Yeah, that's a classic as well. I don't even know which one to pick out of that too, but it is interesting where like, thoughts of ideas for movies come along and then suddenly, the opposite studio is doing the exact same thing. I feel like maybe that's just Hollywood, not liking each other too much. So they kind of just want to step on each other's toes a little bit. But that's actually a great idea for an episode and definitely one we should do in the future.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of that case as well. Kody, where do you want to start?
I'd say we start with Disney.
Disney's well, I'll talk my thoughts watching the original, going back.
Yeah.
The animation is good, the music is good. I think it's an average story. Like I just don't maybe connect to the Pinocchio story we'll get into as we go. Like I just don't find it extremely interesting. I don't think it's the greatest story ever told about the human condition, but whatever. There is some shocking stuff with donkey ears and children turning into donkeys. And that whole part of the movie, I had no idea that was coming. And it was really out of left field, beyond the fact that it also happens in the Disney live action version to a certain degree. So let's talk about that. Directed by Robert Zemeckis.
Oh, man.
This is considered live action in the sense that Disney considers the Lion King live action, and that Tom Hanks is on a set on a blue screen and everything else. Like, I do not think anything in this movie was shot in real life beyond Tom Hanks. Like, there are full sequences where it is a digital camera moving around a digital space and Jiminy Cricket and Pinocchio and whatever. It just like, it's not a Who Framed Roger Rabbit or Chippendale Rescue Rangers live action with digital characters. It is a digital movie that they threw Tom Hanks in.
Wait, that wasn't a CGI Tom Hanks? That was actually
It might have been. Might explain some things.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, oh man, this movie, it's just lifeless. Like, it's heartless, it's lifeless, and it's bad. It also doesn't make any sense. We can go into the plot a bunch more.
The plot lost me. I stopped paying attention. I won't lie to you, Kody.
I mean, once they got to that island, and what's that guy's name? Luke Evans? Is that his name? and he's just popping out of like floorboards and shit. I didn't know what was going on. It's such obvious CGI. Another thing that really irked me was all the CGI clocks in Tom Hanks's place.
They had a Space Jam: A New Legacy moment.
Yeah. Like, oh, hey, we just want to remind everybody this is a Disney movie. If you guys didn't know, we're gonna throw every property again that we just have randomly in these clocks, and they go off like 4 times too. Like it doesn't stop how many times they go off. Yeah, this movie it really sucks. It's really boring, and it feels so much longer than it actually is. I think it's like an hour 40, hour 50. I legit thought like this is almost a 3-hour film, because every scene just drags on. There's honestly not that much dialogue. It's kind of just like long shots. The first act of like Tom Hanks going to bed. That's the first half hour, and then finally we get to the ferry, and then she talks for God knows how long as well. Yeah, not great. Disney knows what they're making. Tom Hanks knows exactly what they're making. And I expect a Razzie incoming for Tommy.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt is Jiminy Cricket, Kody.
I didn't even. Yeah. Also, the thing is, there's such good people involved with this movie. Tom Hanks, George Gordon-Levitt's a good actor. Robert Zemeckis, what are you doing, brother? Robert Zemeckis was one of the great, directors of our age.
Well, of our parents' age.
True, but it's just sad to see him go down, this hole this far. I mean, this guy. I need to look up his IMDb. Obviously, he directed Back to the Future, which is an iconic, film. But he's done so much other good stuff as well. Forrest Gump, another obvious one. But for him to stoop at this level, I think it's pretty sad. And I mean, I would watch his next film, but after this, I'm not too sure. This may be his last, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, him and Tom Hanks obviously have a bit of a relationship. I know they've worked on some other projects as well. You mentioned Forrest Gump, of course, and Pinocchio. I think maybe this, I don't know, is it a case of like he's doing Tom Hanks a favor and they're just like, I don't know. It's baffling to me. Some of Tom Hanks's career decisions as of late have been a bit baffling. He's really fallen into this bumbling old guy Tom Hanks like type thing. He's doing with Geppetto. He's got this new movie, A Man Called Otto, that's coming out, which looks atrocious. But who knows? Maybe it'll be decent.
That's just like randomly come out as well. Like I didn't even know that was a thing.
It's a January release, so you can't expect.
I saw the trailer for it on TV, and then I was going to look to go see a movie at a theater, and suddenly it's like playing 10 times. I'm like, what the hell? Like this is already out. I saw literally a trailer for it yesterday. But yeah, his agent. Oh man, Tommy boy, you need to move on because he's literally accepting every terrible role in Hollywood these days. So. I don't know. He's gone downhill. Him and Zemeckis on a sinking ship together, I guess. But
yeah, and throw Joseph Gordon-Levitt in there too, because I think his career as of late has not been too hot. He's not been doing a whole lot. He sees himself as like a visionary and changing the music industry or some shit with his like hit record stuff. He directed the film Don John maybe about a decade ago at this point, which is a strange film in itself. Not a terrible one, but just kind of a weird concept to go for as your directorial debut. And he's obviously not had any further projects since then. And this, he's doing a weird voice. Like he's not even, that's the thing. If you're going to hire like movie stars to be in your movie because of their like star power to sell the movie, one, maybe put them on the poster, put their name on the poster, like even use them to sell it, but then like have them do their voice, but he's not, right? He's doing some weird accent of Jiminy Cricket, which in that case, I just wish it was a real voice actor doing that. If they're going to do like Jiminy Cricket, like let's do a weird accent and do a voice. Let's have a real voice actor do it. If not, just make it fucking Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree more. If I'm being honest, I didn't even know it was him.
Exactly.
Like, you said something the other day about how bad Joseph Gordon-Levitt was. I was like, I didn't even know he was Jiminy Cricket. But as well, all like the CGI characters just piss me off. Like, why is Keegan-Michael Key? Why is he even a fox? There's no other like CGI characters other than the main. Also, there's a random fish, and he's got a cat too.
The fox is from like because that's the other thing, Kody. This is essentially a shot for shot remake.
Yeah, but it's much worse. But he's like the only animal character who's like a humanoid. Everyone else is just a human in this movie, except for Keegan-Michael Key.
Why does Figaro not talk? I mean, Jiminy Cricket, also a humanoid character, but
yeah, not really.
I see your point.
He's a cricket. I don't know. This movie sucks ass, dude. That's all I gotta say.
It's really bad.
Please don't watch it.
Don't watch it.
Be the one where I'd be like, actually never watch this film because it's just a waste of 3 hours.
Which moves us on to another horrible movie that you didn't watch and I did watch, kind of. The Russian Pinocchio, also known as Pinocchio, the true story.
Yeah. Can I preface this? Because I just saw the trailer.
Or sorry, a true story.
Oh, a true story. I'll give you my thoughts super quickly. Yeah, how the hell can this be based on a true story? I mean, it's Pinocchio. So the title lost me already. And yeah, from the trailer, the thing that really stuck out to me was the voice work. Just looks embarrassing. I mean, you got Pauly Shore, the Pauly Shore, voicing Pinocchio. Not even Geppetto. He's doing Pinocchio. How old is Pauly Shore now? 60, 70? I don't know. And then out of left
54.
54, that's pretty old for 10-year-old kid. And then as well, there's no Jiminy Cricket, I don't believe, at least not in the trailer. But it looks like he got replaced by a horse who's voiced by John Ader of Napoleon Dynamite fame, which evidently his career's really gone downhill as well if he's doing this. But yeah, it looks terrible. But you actually watched the whole thing, I believe, right?
About halfway through, turned into a podcast of sorts. I got up and was doing some chores and listening to the dialogue, but I could not subject myself to the full runtime, unfortunately. This is free to watch on Tubi and Pluto TV. We call it the Russian version because it is actually a Russian animated film and was originally, like, all the dialogue is in Russian. These people, John Heder and Pauly Shore, have been then purchased to come in and do a dub over that dialogue, which then causes some of the, mouth movements to not quite match up. I will actually say I would prefer this movie to the Zemeckis version.
Wow.
They're both 1.5 stars for me, but I do like this one better.
That's a bold statement.
It is a bold statement. It doesn't have great animation. The bringing in of the horse character, which is John Heder, as you say, his name is Tybalt, kind of just a strange decision. Part of that reason is, which we'll get into for the Guillermo del Toro version, but Disney owns the name Jiminy Cricket. The original Pinocchio story had a cricket in it, but he was not named. So like Jiminy Cricket as a character is a Disney property. So
that's why that wasn't his name in the Guillermo one. It was something else.
It's not Sebastian J. Cricket in Guillermo del Toro.
Okay, that makes sense. I didn't think about that. Nice.
So for this, the Russians say, we're not even dealing with no fucking cricket. Give us a horse. Horse named Tybalt. He's kind of a weird looking horse. He's a little bit red at different points. Just very strange all around. They do make a joke early on in the film where they're trying to name Pinocchio and they're like, oh, what should we name him? Should we name him Giuseppe? Oh, no, that's not good. Should we name him Leonardo? And then they go, no, because then he'll either be an artist or a turtle obsessed with pizza or a selfish actor. I was like, they're throwing shots at Leo.
Yeah, that was in the trailer. That got a laugh from me, but a little too meta for my Pinocchio.
The Zemeckis version also very meta. Jiminy Cricket's doing a whole meta thing in the beginning. Both these movies not great. There's definitely some dialogue in this that I think because of the translation, it seems like they like put it into Google Translate and just were like, oh, well, this is what it is. We've got to do it. Like where it's like, it doesn't quite make sense. It's like pretty good most of the time, but there's a couple where it's like, that was clearly just some like, it was probably poetic in Russian, but doesn't quite translate in English. There's a weird cop character that probably, if you really read deeply into it, something Russian, blah, blah. I don't know.
He represents somebody in Russia.
Right. Yeah, sure. I don't know. The important thing to tap into here is the Pauly Shore and the John Heder of it all. Obviously, these two people were hired because in a kind of sad sense, they're kind of like D-list celebrities that are maybe needing some cash. So a Russian production company can come in and pay them and put their faces and names on it and get idiots like me to watch the movie because of that. Like nobody would have talked about this film otherwise if it was just like random voice actors in some Russian film. This was on TikTok a few months ago. That's how I heard about it, right? They used that to sell it to a certain degree, which you can say is sad, but good for them. They're getting their bag. They're not good though. They're very strange choices, like you alluded to. Pauly Shore, I actually don't even know what like his normal voice sounds like, but he's pitched it up a little bit, I think. It's got a little bit of like a lisp. People on Letterboxd have referred to it as the yassified Pinocchio. But yeah, this movie, all in all, just kind of strange. I don't know. Weird combination of things happening, but better than Zemeckis' version.
Again, bold claim. Yeah, honestly, I think you described it really well. Because I was unbelievably confused by it all coming into the episode, and I feel like I have a clear picture. Definitely still not going to watch it, but it sounds not that bad, but still not good.
The storyline itself is still pretty similar. He goes and he joins a traveling circus or whatever in Geppetto, blah, blah, blah. There's more of a push of like Pinocchio, and I think this is in the trailer where he's like, I want to explore the world, father. Like, let me see the world. And Geppetto's like, no, fucking stay here. You're like a wooden boy. It's dangerous out there. So it's like this like angsty teen, like I need to escape my father's powers type thing as well. There's definitely a plot twist somewhere that I just didn't understand what the twist was, but it was like, because he doesn't get given life by a blue fairy like in the other versions. It's just some weird witch in a carriage that like gives him life. And then later, I think she's like related to some, or like there's some weird plot twist where somebody's son or daughter or something. I don't know, Kody. This movie is strange. And I definitely missed some stuff, I guess.
Nice. In the trailer, I remember it looked like he was going to go and try and get turned into a real boy. Which I feel like we didn't really see in the other Pinocchios. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, if he's somebody's son or some witch's son, that sounds pretty stupid.
I'll leave you with a final line from the movie, and I'm probably gonna misquote it, but Pinocchio said, but I want to be human. And I think Tybalt says to him, or another character, who knows who says it, if you want to be human, just be human. Tybalt says, wow, that's deep. So Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, Kody, obviously we've made plenty of jokes about you because you picked it to win best original score, like we've talked about. What did you think when you saw it? Did you like it?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I think this movie has been, pretty critically acclaimed and everything. I'm not its biggest supporter. The thing that definitely stands out for me is the stop motion animation. I mean, it's pretty insane the amount of work like they actually did for just each and every shot. So respect it for that, because I wouldn't want to stand there for I don't even know how long it took to film. It had to take forever. But respect a ton for that, because it looks amazing. Yeah, it does put it in the real world. We're in World War II Italy, so it's a different take on it than what we've seen. I like that. I mean, this movie's deep. This movie's dark as hell. So if that's for you, that's for you. Geppetto is just super depressing in this movie. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of just like, if it's your cup of tea, I get it. And there's a ton of good, interesting ideas. I specifically like the whole afterlife thing, where he's pretty much unkillable. And he keeps, coming back into the afterlife and talking to whoever, I don't even know. Is that the person who gave him life? I can't remember. But it's whatever that guy
It's like
is.
the sister, right? Because they're like, yeah.
My
the person that gives him life. Yeah.
Oh, she messed up. Oh, she's too nice. But all of those interactions where he was in the afterlife, I actually thought were really good, and was definitely my favorite part of the movie, just because they would bring up, different themes of, mortality, immortality, what makes a good person, all that good stuff. And this movie does have heart. Like, I do think this is a good movie, but yeah, I don't know if it's that good. But shout out to Guillermo. I mean, clearly a passion project from him. Honestly, one of his better movies, I'd say. I think he's kind of hit or miss for me, but for his filmography, I think this is pretty good. What do you think?
I'll admit I don't know if I've really seen any of his movies or too many of them in the past, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Shape of Water?
No, I haven't seen Shape of Water.
Yeah.
I'm out. I'm sorry, Michael
That's
Shannon.
fiction, brother.
I know. We'll get there one day. but he's a very interesting character. I've heard him talk in some interviews and different stuff, and so like I'm familiar with who he is, right? And I can see how this appeals to his sensibilities, understanding some of the other movies he's done. This idea of like anti-fascism and placing it in this time. I know that comes up in other works of his. You talked about heart, and this movie does have a lot of heart and soul. And that beginning where Geppetto loses his son in the church, not really sure about how that bomb kills him, but doesn't, the physics of it all doesn't quite make sense because the crucifix is still standing. But
it was also a hell of a shot from
yeah, they got him, sniped him.
Respect.
But it's obviously like a sad, heartbreaking opening. It gives Geppetto in every other version, I feel like you don't really understand why he's doing this. It's just like, oh yeah, he's just like a weird, sad old guy. I think in the Zemeckis version, they're basically like, yeah, this dude doesn't fuck. So they say it a little bit lighter, but having this, like, he lost his son, he's trying to recreate it, the tones of war and heartbreak in that sense, I think is really interesting in this movie. The animation is incredible, like you said. I'm actually gonna have to go. They're at the MoMA here in Museum of Modern Art here in New York. They've got the whole display of all the real sets that you can like go check out and see how they made it. So definitely planning to do that, and I'll have to report back how it looks. But just incredibly beautiful. This idea of like the animators kind of being actors and Guillermo wanting to present them as such is definitely true, because there's like so many minute details and the facial expressions and the hair moving, and it is such intricate, incredible work that I cannot imagine even having the patience to begin to do. I've seen like a time lapse of like one scene, and just seeing how much the person who's moving them clothes change, like how many different outfits they're in, makes you know how many days this took. Like single sequences of moving is just days and days of work, and it's incredible.
It's like that Parks and Rec scene where Ben, he spent however long it was. I think it was
There's
like
a great, I think, iCarly joke as well, where Spencer does the same thing, where he's like doing
he like, oh, I worked on this for a week, and it was like he wasn't even 10 seconds, it was like 3 seconds. He's like, oh man, I did all of that in a week. So yeah, it really is like that though, where that much input is not that much output. I feel like it's super frustrating to do, but respect to it. Like, that it really truly is art.
What do you think about the voice actors in this version, Kody? Ewan McGregor, obviously, kind of bearing the brunt of the weight.
Yeah, Ewan, I mean, his voice, I could listen to that all day. So I think he's a great pick for Sebastian J. Cricket, as you said earlier, not Jiminy. But he's good. I also thought the Pinocchio kid, I remember his name, but
Gregory Mann.
Yeah, out of the three, I mean, there's no doubt he's the best as well. Him and Ewan really have the brunt of like the script, I would say. Every character design, even like the monkey, that was probably one of my favorite characters in the movie. And I believe that's voiced by
Cate Blanchett.
Yeah, Cate Blanchett. I always get her, and
not even like speaking.
I know,
just making monkey noises.
It's crazy, but I think that's one of the best characters in the film, weirdly. But yeah, I mean, especially compared to the Russian version, the voiceover work here is immaculate.
Yeah, there's a clip, and maybe I'll just throw it in here, of Cate Blanchett talking about playing Spazzatura, and just like she just wanted to be in the movie, and Guillermo was like, well, this is all we got left, and she's like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And she's just making monkey noises the whole time.
I think we were on set one day, and I said, when are we going to work together again? And he said, I'm doing Pinocchio. And he went, oh. And he'd said to me the day before that he said, you're not this mysterious woman. You're really a really cheeky, naughty 12-year-old boy. And so he said, why don't you play the monkey?
That's quite a compliment.
So I don't have any words. I just make monkey noises for 2 hours.
Well, we were doing Nightmare Alley, and it was one of our last days in Nightmare Alley. And she said, I've had so much fun with you. We should work immediately. And she said, do you have anything on Pinocchio? I said, well, the only thing I have is a monkey. And she says, I'll do it. And she did it. And what is really funny is we would be recording the monkey in London, and then she would stay in the booth and record her lines for Tar. So
it's a good video.
Count Volpe is Christoph Waltz, which I think is also a really smart and great character, and like maybe you didn't recognize it, but like once you make that connection of like, oh yeah, this is a villainous guy. Like, it's a great pick.
Yeah. Oh, Christoph Waltz is one of the greats, and I didn't realize that. I didn't stay long enough in the credits, I guess, for that one. But any like sort of villainous role, that's got to be the go-to guy.
Okay, my final thing, Kody, best picture. You don't think it's got a shot to make it in? Guillermo, like you said, he's Shape of Water. He's a former Best Picture winner. He's won Best Director at least once, maybe been nominated a few times. Let me do some research. What do you think? What are its shots at the Oscars?
Oh man, for Best Picture, I'd give it like 1 to 100. I think for Best Animated Feature, I do think it'll get nominated. Although there have been surprisingly a decent amount of good animated movies. Shout out Puss in Boots, which I believe you saw, and I think I'm going to see that this weekend because I've heard really good things. But Best Picture, I mean, the 10 obviously helps that out a lot. But I think this year was low-key a pretty strong year in movies, and I think they'll give it to other like borderline ones like Top Gun and Black Panther over it 100%.
Obviously, we're still fucking like 2 months, 3 months away from even getting nominations. 2 months from nominations, I think. But he is, like I said, he's well loved at the Oscars. Here it is. Last year, Nightmare Alley, which like a movie nobody really cared about, got a few noms, notably Best Picture. He did win for The Shape of Water, and also won Best Directing for The Shape of Water. Also was nominated for Best Original Screenplay that year, and then also was nominated for Best Original Screenplay in 2007. But I don't know. The Academy likes him. It's an international body. This is obviously kind of a theme that will relate to a more international audience than some. This is a great movie year. I will tell you that, Kody. It's a fantastic movie year, especially compared to last year. But there's also a lot of movies that are like franchise, IP, sequel. There's like 4 of those. And it wouldn't surprise me if a movie like Pinocchio would get in over one of those because of, you know, the appreciation for the auteur behind it.
Yeah. I think honestly, I think it would deserve a nom over Top Gun, like the sequels you were talking about.
Definitely Avatar: The Way of the Water. That's my take. I did watch it.
That gets nominated too. I bet that gets nominated as well.
Oh, it will.
But yeah, for Guillermo, I mean, I feel like that was kind of just a legacy award. Sort of like everybody says that for Scorsese about The Departed. Like Guillermo's just been making decent movies for forever. So he makes a really good movie in The Shape of Water. Yeah, give him Best Director, give him Best Picture. He is like in his Oscar bait phase, though. I mean, like you said, Nightmare Alley. I feel like that's pretty big Oscar bait. This is not so much, but like you said, I mean, it's just like recency as well. If the Academy sees somebody producing good stuff year after year, it's gonna get in their head like, oh, this guy should be, nominated for Best Director every year.
I think also Netflix, they are always trying to push, one of their movies somewhere. And the thing is, this hasn't been a good year for them. I like White Noise, but most people don't, and it's definitely going to be out of the Oscar race. And it really comes down to how much do they push Glass Onion and how much do they push Pinocchio, because those are really their only 2 dogs in the fight.
Oh, they should definitely push Glass Onion more. But
well, I agree, but those, in a year where they might have, 3 or 4 films that, they can push out. These are the 2 that they've spent the most money on, and you bring in Guillermo del Toro as a director and you pay him money for a passion project that he's wanted to make many years in the hopes that it gets you an award, which you did say Best Animated. I think it will get nominated, and I hope it wins Best Animated personally.
Yeah, I would say at this point, I would agree with that, but don't count out Puss in Boots yet.
It is my favorite animated movie, but
I would probably pick it for Best Animated Feature as well, which is ironic because I didn't even pick it in our Oscar predictions. I went with Saving Red for some reason. Didn't even stick to my guns.
Turning Red.
Yeah, whatever. I didn't even see it, but at least I didn't pick Lightyear. But I do think it'll definitely get nominated for Best Animated, and it would probably be my pick to win.
All right, let's continue on with our discussion of the public domain and hit our top 5 public domain characters. But before we do that, let's take a quick commercial break. And we're back. All right, so I figure we'll start at 5 and we'll go to 1. I dropped something again. We'll start at 5 and we'll go to 1. Kody, what's your number 5?
Okay, my number 5, and we did mention it already, but it's so obvious, and I love the character so much I have to bring it up again. It's Winnie the freaking Pooh.
That's my number 2, baby.
Good to hear. But yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I said this too much on the pod, but like growing up, Winnie the Pooh. This is also like little Cody here. Winnie the Pooh is like my favorite character. I don't know why. I just connected with him, and seeing that trailer come out the past year is pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie. So bringing him into the public domain, going completely different directions. Christopher Robin's dead. Let's kill them all. I say. I really love that character, and I think we will see other stuff. Obviously, they just did again an Ewan McGregor film surrounded by those characters. I don't even remember what the hell it's called. Something Christopher Robin or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Forgettable. But I think the majority of this stuff, the people who sort of have a say in all of this, most of it is Disney, or at least in this scenario. But I feel like give other people a chance. Like these are such iconic characters, and yeah, I want to see more Winnie the Pooh movies. I want to see Heffalumps. I want to see Tigger. I want to see it all, but that had to make my list.
Yeah, I mean, it was number 2 for me for a reason. I think similar to you, I connected with it as a child. I had an aunt who was really a big fan of Eeyore, so we would like get each other different things at different points. My mom enjoyed Winnie the Pooh. My dad has a Tigger tattoo on his ankle, Tigger with a baseball bat, and a Winnie the Pooh one in a pot of honey on the other ankle. So like it's just something that my family's always enjoyed and I've always enjoyed, and it rightfully deserves that spot of number 2. We're definitely going to have to do a Blood and Honey review episode when the time comes.
Absolutely. That's a no doubter. That'll be an easy pick for me, but yeah, we have to do that.
My number 5, it's a little bit of a dual one, and it's kind of just encompassing it's Hercules / Achilles, but really it's just kind of all of Greek mythology to a certain degree, because like these characters are not owned by anyone. They are technically in the public domain. To some people, they're, and to a certain extent, they are real figures. Some of these people, but the stories of them, I think, are just so classic. Obviously, the Hercules animated film, I think for people of our age, is a big touchstone. And unfortunately, the Russo brothers are adapting another version for Disney. That's supposed to be more like TikTok, which is scary to hear. But I mean, going back to Percy Jackson, I've always enjoyed Greek mythology. Even before that, I read like a kid's version of the Odyssey that was adapted by the same person that wrote the Magic Treehouse books. She did like an Odyssey version that I was obsessed with and I would read. And I've just always been super interested in the characters, Hercules, Achilles, Odysseus in the Odyssey. So just kind of all of those I think are really interesting. And if I was ever to like do something, like I said, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Like I think it'd be really cool to do like modern adaptations or modern versions of these similar stories, which they have done. But yeah, it's really cool.
I dig that a lot. And yeah, I was never super into the Greek mythology. But the Odyssey is a great story. And that'd be super fun to put your own spin on, I think. But yeah, the new Russo brothers movie. Did they cast what's the also the Hercules animated movie classic?
Great voice actors.
What's the guy's name? The little the
Phil?
miniature. What's his name? Jim?
Phil. His name is Phil. He's played by Danny DeVito in the.
Yeah, is Danny DeVito playing him in the live action one or what? I mean, you can't recast that. That's like Robin Williams-esque, I think.
Well, they did. It was Will Smith.
Well, yeah, because Robin Williams passed away though.
True. Currently, there's no official cast list available.
Okay, maybe they're holding it close to the vest, but that's a big missed opportunity. I'm gonna have to hit up the Russos and tell them what's what with Danny, because he's got to reprise that role. That was just perfection. But
Danny DeVito reportedly wants to be cast in the remake, and rumors have circulated behind the scenes about reach outs to people like Chris Pratt and Chris Hemsworth to take the role of Hercules. So there you go, but no official list out.
I like Hemsworth. I don't know about Pratt. Yeah, that sounds like a good cast. Anywho, I say move on to number 4. Do you want to go first? You want to keep it rolling?
No, go ahead. You got it.
All right, my number 4. Not my favorite character, but I think it is interesting and topical. Peter Pan. Yeah, this guy. He's been in the public domain, I believe, for a little bit. Disney is releasing. I think they I don't know, maybe they probably announced it a long time ago, but I didn't see it. But they released their little Disney Plus snippet of, what's coming in 2023. And there's a new Peter Pan movie coming out. And I just thought that was funny because the last time they tried to do it with Hugh Jackman, it turned out to be like one of the biggest bombs in Disney history. So I don't know. I think Peter Pan as a character, the original animated film, another one of my favorites growing up. But I don't think it holds up great today. I don't know how you can really do Neverland in live action. It seems too weird with like.
Isn't that what Hook is basically?
What's up? Yeah,
Isn't that essentially what Hook is?
Well, yeah, that's true too. But that's why that movie's not good. Shout out Spielberg. But yeah, I mean, you have like grown up Captain Hook and pirates, trying to catch these little boys. It's really weird, in live action, I think. And then they try to do weird things well with Hugh Jackman, where he's singing Nirvana to Peter Pan and all these kids. So I just think it's one like it's almost unadaptable to live action, but Disney just refuses to let it go, which I think is pretty funny.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even know about this version that you're referencing, but
yeah, I believe it's called like Peter Pan and Wendy or something.
It's just called Pan.
Oh, the Hugh Jackman one, yeah.
Rooney. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking. I did not know about that.
Oh,
Rooney
yeah.
Mara, Cara Delevingne.
Yeah. Rooney Mara plays she's supposed to be like a Native American character as well. It's bad, dude. Do not watch it.
Looks very offensive, but public domain. That's what'll happen sometimes.
It's true. I mean, you give it to the wrong people at the wrong time, stuff like that happens, but that's the beauty of public domain.
I do agree. I think it's definitely a very difficult story to adapt in live action. My number 4 is King Kong, the great monkey himself. I think, with the association of Godzilla, which I do not believe is a public domain character himself, but King Kong, I mean, never been done great in any version that I've seen necessarily. Shout out Jack Black.
I thought you liked Skull Island.
I do like Skull Island. It's actually pretty decent. But I don't know. What's cooler than a big monkey, Kody? Like, it's
Not
King
much.
Kong. Obviously, a super iconic image, the idea of like him climbing and holding the woman. And in the history of film, a very important character. And big monkey.
Yeah. You can argue with Big Monkey. Yeah, that's just another classic character. I mean, that original, I don't even know when that original movie came out. Like that was one of the early on, one of the biggest movie hits. But yeah, the Peter Jackson version is just way too long. I don't really like that movie at all. And then Skull Island was okay. I like John C. Reilly in that film. But for some reason, Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston, I think, are actually bad, which is weird. But yeah, and then you got the whole team up against Godzilla. So I wasn't a big fan of that film either.
And the cool thing is that the reason King Kong is in the public domain is not because his copyright isn't old enough. Because the first entrance of King Kong, you didn't know, 1933 was the first appearance, but Universal made a mistake and they did not have their copyright renewed, and then the story became public domain access, and then they were kind of out of luck, which was kind of cool. Bad capitalism failing, corporatized America.
Should have had better lawyers.
Yeah, seriously. So shout out. That's why we can have King Kong.
Heck yeah. Shout out public domain.
And I think because King Kong King Kong versus Godzilla, I believe, is a Warner Brothers film. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
Yeah, but Universal is the original, monsters and such.
They have a universe, don't they?
Well, they
With
tried.
Johnny Depp?
Tom Cruise. There's a great picture of that.
Mr. Eye.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good. Shout out the Mummy. Number 3 for me. Well, I guess this is still Disney somehow. We're sticking with Disney, but not really. It's Robin Hood. I think this is an all-time character, and I think it really just shows the beauty of public domain, I think, in the best way, just because there's been so many different interpretations of it. I think I said we need to account on how many times I've said interpretations. Arrow. I don't think that counts. But I mean, you go comedy with, Robin Hood Men in Tights. You go the animated Disney version, which is actually pretty good, surprisingly. And then you get to the modern era where, I don't even know, there's like a new Robin Hood movie every 5 years. I think Taron Egerton just had one, right? With Jamie Foxx, which nobody saw, including me. But I feel like every 10 years, we get a new look and like a new telling of Robin Hood, which is super cool. Also, there's a dope Star Trek The Next Generation episode where they basically do a Robin Hood episode. Really good stuff. But yeah, I feel like the character's super fun. And like you can go comedy, you can go action. and it kind of just reminds me of The Princess Bride. So can't go wrong.
There's definitely a Robin Hood-esque element to the Princess Bride, to the Wesley character. So I back that. I don't know. Give to the rich, or take from the rich, give to the poor. I can get behind that.
You know, I'm not the rich, so I'm not complaining.
Let's move on to my number 3, Kody, which, speaking of the Universal Monster Verse, Dracula. Always been a vampire guy. I don't know if there's a lot of great Dracula renditions that I really enjoy. You know, there's the Dracula Untold, I believe, is that. I don't know. It's been done a ton of times, but I just think vampires are so interesting. And I think I kind of made this list of like, what would I want to work with? And I think doing a Dracula story, doing a vampire story kind of based around that mythology would be really interesting. There was a movie that came out earlier this year that I didn't like very much called The Invitation. It's actually out on Netflix right now. And that's kind of like it's like a Dracula meets Get Out kind of movie to a certain degree. Not a super successful movie, but it's cool to see the ways that you can iterate upon that character and build your own universe and world around it. So that's kind of why I like Dracula. And I think it'd be a really cool starting place because you can do modern, you can do ancient, vampires live forever. You can tell the origin story. You can tell the classic vampire hunter story. Like there's so many cool directions you can go with vampires. You can make vampires however you want. You can, you know, do the sunlight thing, do the stake through the heart, the garlic crosses, or you can make them fucking invincible. Like there's so many different ways you can take Dracula, which I think is cool.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that was number 2 on my list, actually. So I'm back and
he's the all-time bad.
He really is. And I think, again, you can do him so many different ways. I mean, you mentioned a couple more darker ones. I mean, you also have like Hotel Transylvania, which obviously Adam Sandler joint, not the best, but still fun. Even you can go so wild with it too. Like Van Helsing. Also, I don't know if you even know what this movie is, but Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Oh yeah, I know all about that.
So I mean, you can incorporate really anything you want with a character and it'll still work. There's great like Scooby-Doo movies as well. A ton of animated stuff. I think he is just the ultimate villain. You can kind of throw him in anything. You can be campy if you want to. You can be menacing if you want to. You can be like dark and brooding. Bram Stoker's Dracula. I actually do like that film surprisingly. But even like Blade, I guess you can kind of throw anything with vampires in into this category. But I would say like in public domain, he's got to be on most people's lists. I would say a top character.
All-time badass. I mean, based upon, you know, like the Vlad the Impaler, obviously this terrible historical figure in his own right. And yeah, just the perfect villain. You know, there's also a lot of the plight of the vampire, and you can go into that whole direction of like, what does it mean to be immortal and how do you deal with that? And yeah, it's a really great character.
But there are still a lot of bad movies made about him.
Yeah, definitely.
There really hasn't been one since Dracula Untold, which is another bomb. I feel like most of these characters, it just gets to the point in the public where they're kind of like, okay, we've seen most of it, and they try and make a really big budget version of it, and it just completely bombs. Same with Frankenstein, which I don't know if you're gonna bring up, but I feel like sometimes like it does get old, which is the problem with public domain. But with like such good character, like it doesn't really matter, I don't think.
All right, Kody, what's your number 1?
All right, my numero uno, it's got to be the guy, Sherlock Holmes. We were talking about him earlier, and I just think he's one of the best characters in general, sort of like Dracula, but obviously in a completely different way. And again, I mean, there's just such cool modern versions of him, I think, which really bumps him up for me. Obviously, the Holmes and Watson, whatever that movie's called, with Will Ferrell, kind of does bring it down a little bit. It is kind of sad to see, you know, somebody stoop that low on such a fun character. But I mean, the Robert Downey Jr. versions are actually good, which is super surprising. And obviously, there's so much just other media where he's involved in. Again, weirdly enough, there's a really cool Shrek and Moriarty episodes in Star Trek: The Next Generation. So maybe I'm just basing my entire life off that show. But yeah, I mean, again, the super sleuth, one of the best characters of all time. I think Sherlock deserves to be at the top of my list.
Yeah, I back it. You know, I've never been a Sherlock Holmes guy though. You know, I think I've never seen the Robert Downey Jr. movies. Definitely haven't seen Fulton
Really?
Holmes and Watson. I did start one of the RDJ movies one time and then just like got distracted and have never returned to it. That was like 4 years ago, 3 years ago. But
dude, I forgot to mention Cumberbund. Benedict Cumberbatch, that guy's the best modern Sherlock by far as well.
Never seen Sherlock the show. I did see The Hound of the Baskervilles on stage in Indianapolis, and that is like the only Sherlock Holmes thing that I've watched. So yeah, I guess as a character just doesn't connect for me in the same way, but he's such a heavy hitter. He's probably one of the most notable, besides one that is not going to make my list that we'll talk about in a minute. But my number one is another dual one. It's King Arthur in the sense of the King Arthur world as a whole, but it's really Merlin because I think that is a cool character. There used to be this Merlin TV show from a few years ago that I would watch on Netflix. Like 2008 it came out. There's like 5 seasons. I don't know, some weird nerdy show about fucking Merlin and King Arthur and all that shit. There was a Merlin series of books that I was really into. I don't even remember what they were. And then, of course, like I said earlier in the show, Magic Treehouse, Merlin kind of plays a role in those series of stories as well. So from an early age, I've kind of always been interested in the King Arthur, Merlin, Knights of the Round Table. Transformers has done a King Arthur Knights of the Round Table thing with Optimus Prime. Apparently, I haven't really watched those movies, but I just think
seen that one. Yeah,
despite not being a fantasy guy, like in every other aspect, I'm not. Like I don't like Lord of the Rings. I don't like Game of Thrones. I can get behind some King Arthur and some Merlin shit magic. Like I just think that stuff's really cool.
Yeah, I back it. It's definitely a cool character. The Game of Thrones slander, I won't back. But no, this character in general, Merlin, I agree. I think he's definitely underrated. And I did read the Magic Treehouse book as well, so I agree with you on that point. But yeah, King Arthur, I mean, that's been done billions of times. Transformers, like you mentioned. Oh man, they brought Anthony Hopkins in that movie as well. I feel bad for him. But yeah.
The Lost Years of Merlin was the book series that I liked. Would recommend.
I'll have to order those off Amazon tonight. But yeah, I agree. Another great character, and again, like we'll definitely see more movies of him like in the next 5-10 years. I feel like, no doubt.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Notable honorable mentions.
Well, actually, I have a couple other characters, and they're about to enter the public domain in the coming years. Should I list them off here?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So obviously 2024, Steamboat Willie, Mickey Mouse. We'll see. 2033. So we're jumping a decade here, but the 30s are going to be super interesting. 2033, Superman technically could go into the public domain, which would be dope. And then 2034, the next year, that's when James Bond, I believe, maybe it re-goes into it. I don't know, too much research for me, but that's that. And then also that year in 2034, Batman goes in the public domain as well, which I mean, if we get like off-brand from DC, like Superman and Batman movies, that's going to be crazy. I feel like everybody should just pump those out. I don't know why they wouldn't. And then as well in 2030, so a couple years before, the Looney Tunes goes public domain as well. So kind of, I mean, the next couple decades in film, I think will be a little bit hectic, sort of just people scrambling for, whatever does come to the public domain. And we probably will get a lot of very interesting takes on a lot of these characters, and I'm low-key excited for it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how they kind of play around with that whole like iterations of a character idea and like, oh, well, the first comic of Superman or whatever, or like this first appearance will be available. So like you can't use any other costumes that have appeared later or like specific storylines that come up. So I'm sure it'll definitely, happen, but it'll be kind of a slow process and kind of seeing where do people take their own ideas. Obviously, Superman himself, I mean, he's basically just based on Jesus, right? The oldest public domain character of them all. We can throw it back.
Gotta be public domain by now. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Shout out Jesus if you're listening.
Really, it gets into the really like all gods and goddesses. We talked about Greek mythology, but Thor and Loki, those are technically public domain characters, not in the sense of the Marvel versions of them, but Thor as a character you could use. Of course, the classic Don Quixote, the Mexican novel. I don't know if you ever read that in Spanish class in high school, but we did. I don't understand it, but it's a fun one. And Tarzan, another Disney class. I mean, a lot of Disney movies that they made, but there's been a ton of Tarzan films over the years as well.
Yeah, it's true. They just had I think one released in the past few years that was really bad. So again, kind of just like they're running out of ideas at this point, and they keep making these public domain characters just bad, which kind of sucks. But we'll see another version of it. Surprised Disney hasn't remade Tarzan actually, but yeah, God,
I thought they did. The
Did
Legend
they?
of Tarzan,
No.
was that not who did the Legend of Tarzan? That wasn't
That was
Disney.
not the-
That was Warner
I
Brothers.
think that was Warner Brothers.
Alexander
missed every-
Skarsgård and Margot Robbie, dude.
Margot Robbie's in that? See, I didn't know that. I knew Skarsgård, but yeah, I think that one bombed as well. Basically, anything Warner Brothers does in the public domain just bombs. So maybe they should stay away from this episode. But yeah,
not the best. So just notably, like I said, January 1st, we got some new public domain entries. So I just kind of wanted to talk about those real quick. So interestingly, the first major talkie film, which, you know, if you've seen Babylon, you know what that is. Basically the first movie with sound and people talking. The Jazz Singer by Alan Crosland, released in 1927, entered the public domain. So now, like, you can use The Jazz Singer, the first, you know, popular film with talking, in your own movie or your YouTube video. You can like use it however you want, which is kind of cool. Other popular stuff: Metropolis by Fritz Lang, Upstream, John Ford, you know, The King of Kings, Cecil B. DeMille, like a lot of iconic directors there with some of their films entering the public domain and can be used and readapted and changed by literally anyone, which is definitely a cool thing. Some Hemingway, Men Without Women, Virginia Woolf, To the Lighthouse, The Big Four by Agatha Christie. So maybe we'll see some, you know, another Agatha Christie adaptation. And then some music as well. Putting on the Ritz by Irving Berlin. Can't Help Lovin' Dat Man, Old Man River by Oscar Hammerstein, Jerome Kern from the musical Showboat. Potato Head Blues, Gully Low Blues by Louis Armstrong. You know, it's really cool. You know, the 20s, a lot of, you know, modern culture was starting to happen over the next few years. I think we're going to see some really interesting stuff into the public domain, and it'll be cool to continue paying attention to it.
Yep. And that's why I do kind of like the public domain, because it's bringing back like a bunch of classic or just older stories, and people can just reinterpret them now and bring them into our modern age. So yeah, I think like in general, public domain, it is like a kind of a cool idea, because now we get to relive all of this stuff that, you know, our grandparents enjoyed as entertainment. I think it's cool.
The last thing I want to say is we did a movie character or character draft all the way back in May. Check out season 3, episode 18, Battle for the Heart character draft. In that episode, we drafted public domain characters as part of our squads. So if you want a little bit more public domain action, that's a great episode to check out.
It's true. I can't remember who I drafted.
We took Cthulhu, I believe.
Oh, that's why I don't remember. Yeah. Cthulhu. Yeah, he wasn't brought up in this episode.
We were going for the win.
Yeah. If I were to remember Cthulhu, he probably would have made my list. I mean, that guy's massive. So.
He is a classic. He's top 5 in size, that's for sure.
Oh, he's got to be.
Kody, let's move on to We Have a Podgorithm.
Let's do it. Season 4.
Season 4 deck. Recent movie. Oh, Black Panther. Interesting. That fun one. Talked about it a little bit earlier in the episode. I don't know, Kody. Black Panther's been talked about plenty of times. Do you just want to use this 30 seconds to maybe tell me whether you think Black Panther 2 is going to get nominated for Best Picture?
Sure. I think I still do think it will. It's gotten a mixed reception, but regardless, because of the impact of everything, I mean, it's 10 films. They're not going to leave it out, especially after nominating the first one and, you know, circumstances and stuff. But also as well, I think a really cool thing that's come out is the original plot for Black Panther 2, where it was originally supposed to be, you know, a father-son story where Chadwick Boseman, you know, takes his son out into the wild and they just have to survive for a while. I would have loved to see that movie. It is really sad we don't get to see that. But yeah, I think regardless, it'll definitely get nominated.
Well, it's a good thing that I went second, because my take is the opposite of yours. I don't think it is going to make it in. And listen, I've made plenty of bad Oscars takes on this podcast in the past, so I can't speak to myself as being any sort of expert, but I don't think it does. I think there are other IP sequel movies, like I mentioned, that will get the spots ahead of it. Unfortunately, Avatar: The Way of Water, which I don't think is as good of a movie. Glass Onion. What's the other one that I can't think of right now? What's the other sequel? Oh, Top Gun Maverick, Kody. Like, I don't know. It is 10 films, but there was a lot of great movies this year. And I think while they did nominate the first one, this has definitely not had the same impact as the other. Like, Marvel movies just don't seem to have that same staying power in our culture. And especially, Black Panther being such an important story at the time. I just think this one's, it hasn't done the same box office wise. It hasn't been seen by as many people. I think if they were smart, they'd get it out on Disney Plus as soon as possible so that it can kind of have that second life. But I think if they did the nominations today, it would not get in. Maybe there'll be a big push and we'll hear more Black Panther in the next 2 months, but I don't know. I think it, could get in some other categories, and maybe we'll see an Angela Bassett supporting actress nom, just because that's a little bit lighter of a category. But I don't know. I would say no right now.
It'll be interesting. I think it will be. I mean, like, if it does get in like the 9-10 pick, I think it's definitely on the outside. But yeah, I don't know. I also picked it to get nominated in our Oscar picks. So I'm kind of like, really hoping
you're just hoping.
Kind of just that, but
can't be embarrassed again like last year.
Yeah, what I get last year, like 2 or 3.
I think it was 4, Kody.
I'll take 4, thanks.
Yeah, don't sell yourself too short. No, you got 3. Yeah, you got 3.
Yeah.
4 if Pinocchio gets nominated for best score this year, we'll give you the 4.
That should count. Yeah, that should count.
Yeah, it still puts you 4 behind second place and 8 behind first.
Moving closer every year, though.
Yeah, you're getting there. I can already say there's a few movies on mine that I know are not going to get nominated, but we'll talk about when the nominations come out. Let's move on to our recommendations.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up.
It's been a while since we did our last episode, so I've seen a ton of stuff. Yeah. I'm probably going to save most of it for our next episode because we are going to be doing a best of 2022 episode for our next one. So that's my general recommendation. Just check out if there's any 2022 movies that you haven't seen, check those out in the next couple of weeks, because I've seen a ton and I'm going to try and talk about a lot of them.
And that was one of the things on my thing I was going to say as well. Like, they just released a bunch more movies on like HBO Max and crap. I think I'm going to check out
the menu dropped today.
There you go. We're both on it. And I was going to force myself to what's that? I was finally gonna watch Amsterdam as well, which I'm not excited about. But yeah, I'm trying to do the same thing. Try and knock out a bunch. I do have a couple I'll just mention quickly. Glass Onion came out. Great stuff. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. And for the sequel, Ryan Johnson said they might do a Muppets one. So that's unbelievably hype. They better do it, or I'll be pissed. And then a couple other things. I checked out the movie Dope, which I know you've seen, I believe. Shout out Tony Revolori.
Spider-Man's in that movie.
Who's the other one? Oh, does that guy voice Miles Morales?
Yep.
Really? I don't even know that
more. The voice of Miles Morales.
He's really good. I thought he was really stand out in that movie. Zoe Kravitz as well. I really, really like. Also, I thought that girl the entire movie was Tessa Thompson, but it turns out it's not. It's the one who was in Zack Snyder's Justice League playing Iris West. So shout out her. I think she was brilliant in it as well. But
Candace Patton.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, that's the one from The Flash, the TV show. She's much better. Zack Snyder's. I don't know.
Zack Snyder's Justice League. Dude, she plays Iris West.
Kiersey Clemens. Kiersey Clemens. Yeah, Kiersey Clemens.
Yeah, she's actually good. So shout out. And then I did check out RRR as well, which was Your Wreck. Oh man, love that movie. I'm definitely going to talk about it more next episode. And lastly, actually, this won't be the last time I talk about this show, but it'll be one of the last times. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. All right, let's talk about it super quickly. All right, so where we left off, season 1 was shit. Season 2, not great. Season 3, the first 6 episodes are really good, and then it gets fucking terrible. So that's when I was like, oh man, I don't even know why I'm watching the show anymore. But then I got to season 4. That's where it gets good. Season 4 is actually the only good full season. So if you're gonna watch a show, that's the season you need to watch. Season 5 is fucking garbage again. Excuse my language, but nobody's listening at this point. And then season 6 is season 6 is okay. Season 7 is god awful. So basically, even numbered seasons in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are decent, and the rest is garbage. But yeah, that's my Rex for the week.
Are you gonna finish it? Are you gonna watch the whole thing?
Yeah, because of the last season, again, it's actually good. So it's kind of like an every other season.
Season
thing,
8? Is there 8 seasons?
Yeah. No, because season 5 and season 7 are legitimately some of the worst television I've ever seen in my life. But 4, 6, and 8 like are all actually good TV. So it's really weird. It's kind of just like, do they have a good concept this season or not? And yeah, season 4 is they go into this like digital world that's really cool. And Fitz, who's like this great guy, is like a terrible bad guy. And then they come out and all these robots are trying to kill him. It's crazy. It's good stuff. And then season 8, they go back in time and they're kind of just like, it's kind of just like time jumping and they're saving people. There's really cool, just like episodic, episodes, if that makes sense. One of them's like
one-off
they're
episodes.
stuck in like time loop and yeah, it's really good stuff. But yeah, that's my Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. talk for the day.
Yeah, I think that's where I struggle with TV sometimes. It's just that kind of up and down that you can have, and like having to watch a whole season just because you need to know what's gonna happen. Like, I don't know, don't always love that. I think haven't. You're talking about them going into a virtual world. I must have only watched the first 3 seasons. I don't think I made it that far.
Dude, but hey, you should watch season 4 because it is actually really good.
We'll see. Just a couple quick shout outs. Just shout out some Christmas movies, Home Alone, Christmas Vacation that I did watch. Those are good ones.
Yeah.
Watch some bad ones as well. For Christmas, Fred Claus, the Star Wars Holiday Special, fucking atrocious. Just an absolute abhorrent piece of garbage.
Oh.
Because I wanted to see it. I've heard about it. Chewbacca has a wife and a child and a dad, and like 60% of it's a silent film, essentially. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Just Chewbacca's like motioning because you can't understand them.
There's some Boba Fett animated stuff too, I believe, right?
Yeah, the first introduction of Boba Fett was in this. You can watch that short, which I actually do think is okay. It's probably the best part of the whole thing, and you can watch that on Disney Plus. Also, some other movies. I saw Vertigo for the first time. Really, just kind of confusing a little bit. I wasn't as impressed for people saying it's like the second best movie of all time, or according to that AFI Top 100 list, at least. Also saw Eyes Wide Shut, and I've never been a huge Kubrick guy, but I'm starting to get it a little bit more. Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman, icons. And the one thing I will say on HBO Max, This Place Rules. I think maybe I've talked about like Channel 5 and Andrew Callahan on the podcast before, but if not, I've definitely talked about it to you personally, Kody. This Place Rules is his documentary about the 2020 election. It's now out on HBO Max. I think Andrew Callahan is an extremely brilliant journalist, and he's one of the few people that isn't trying to, purposely create division and spread this like harsh news cycle. It's really about, telling the reality, spreading, kind of just showing the truth and getting to the real people on the ground. And he creates a really important portrait of what America is. And if you want to kind of understand how things led up to 2020 and how we got to the Capitol riots in early 2021, This Place Rules is a great place to start.
Yep. That was 100% on I think I have that on my queue list as well, or whatever you call it, my list, or whatever, HBO Max. Because I saw a couple of clips on YouTube as well, and it was hilarious. You've definitely put me on whatever his name is, but that curly-headed guy
Kody,
is funny.
Mina always says, and especially you just cut your hair, shout out to the haircut, but she says you could go as him as Halloween, because as your hair grows longer, it's doing a very similar thing to what his hair looks like now.
I could actually. And yeah, just got a haircut sadly. But hey, Halloween's in what, 10 months? I'll just grow it out and go out. It'll still be topical in 10 months, right? So
there you go. All right. Well, this has been a fun episode about public domain and Pinocchio, and we appreciate you guys listening. Follow us at KHAP Podcast, KHAPODCAST, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, all over. And Happy New Year.
Stay tuned for a ton more in 2023. Love you guys.
Peace.
Stay KHAP.
What you've just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.